Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure that you could join us today for the webinar on Infra Sector Ready for Disruption, powered by Moglix and presented by Construction World magazine. The infrastructure landscape has never been so dynamic as it is today. Digital and technological disruptions are driving change for futuristic infrastructure. If you're planning to adapt digital solutions and are worried about the hurdles for supply chain, skill availability, and technology, these panel of experts today will share their experiences and offer practical solutions to fill the gaps in the construction digitalization. Before we begin, a short presentation on Construction World magazine. 25 years and strong, Construction World is India's largest circulated construction magazine with over 250,000 readers every month. Our digital presence is ever strong and we have reached 70,000 plus on various social media platforms. Just give a missed call on the number that you see on the screen and stay updated with the Construction World's WhatsApp application. CW Gold offers an exclusive content and project updates. Start your free trial today. A few numbers and links. You can grab a screenshot of this slide and stay connected with the entire team. I would also like to bring to your mention that another magazine published by ASAP Info Global Group, that is Industrial Product Finder, is completing its 50 years. We have been publishing this magazine since 1972, and it's a magazine which brings you updates on manufacturing sector, machine tools. With the completion of 50 years, we are presenting 3i Expo, which is on 20th and 21st of May at Nehru Center in Mumbai. This is a event which is a leadership focused event designed to bring Indian manufacturing operations, engineering, quality, supply chain leaders together to discuss the current trends, strategic insights, and best practices in adoption of Industry 4.0. A few benefits for you: stay updated on the technology, meet with the industry experts, a great knowledge sharing platforms with amazing keynote addresses, panel discussions featured during the 2-day show. MIDC is our presenting partner, and our knowledge partners and supporting partners are Automation Industry Association and PPMAI. Our supporting associations. The guest of honor this year will be Mr. Sanjay Bhatia, a few of our past chief guests. The entire 2 days will focus on a very thought-provoking agenda. We will talk about the future of manufacturing and the adoption of Industry 4.0. We have an expert perspective on capital cost versus profitability. We will have specific case studies that will showcase how adoption of Industry 4.0 has helped the companies grow. And on the day 2, we have a policy intervention panel discussion where we talk about making India the next manufacturing hub. And we ended 2 days with the 6th IPF Industrial Excellence Award. We are doing a conference webinar series as well, and we will come back to you with the next. With that, I would like to invite today's speakers and the moderator. First, moderator Mr. Rajiv Nehru, in-market lead RICS, with over 25 years of construction management. Mr. Nehru has honed skills in construction technology, contract management, business strategy, strategic planning, cost management, and program management. I would also like to invite the panel members, Mr. Abhi Trivedi, Senior Director Infra and PSU at Moglix. Abhi brings over 9 years of experience and is responsible for leading companies' foray into infrastructure, PSU, and heavy engineering. Mr. Amitbha Bhattacharjee, AVP and Head Asset Management at Tata Projects, with specialization in construction methodology and innovation in construction equipment management. Mr. Bhattacharjee is heading the construction plant machinery as well as formwork division at Tata Projects. Mr. Varun Pal Chaudhary, Chief Operating Officer, Ashoka Buildcon. He comes with over 30 years of experience of handling complex projects in diverse geographies like India, US, Europe, Africa, and Middle East. He has a strong understanding of various construction technologies, and in the last 10 years has successfully delivered projects more than worth $5 billion US. Mr. K.R.R. Chandran, VP and Head Corporate Services, Heavy Civil at L&T. He comes with over 25 years of experience across construction project management and strategic growth, and has a wealth of experience in executing high-value projects across different segments. And lastly, Mr. Siddharth Dey. He's a Senior VP and Head Projects at Adani Airports. Dynamic, proactive, and articulate professional leader. Mr. Dey comes with over 30 years of experience in managing civil EPC and construction projects. With this, I invite all the speakers to today's webinar. And over to you, Rajiv ji.
Thank you, Rushali. And it's the toughest job on earth to manage stalwarts from industry in front of me, Mr. Chandran, Mr. Bhattacharjee, Mr. Chaudhary, Mr. Dwivedi, Mr. Dey. So I feel really happy and looking forward to the knowledge which is going to be shared in the next 1.5 hours. So we'll try to have a format where we'll have 2 rounds of discussion with the panel. And remaining at the end, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, we'll look at question and answers from the audience. So that is the basic format we like to play around with. Now, if we start with the topic is interesting disruption. Why it has to happen, when it should happen, and who will do it. The first question is why it has to happen. Because things which were normal are not normal. The things which were business as usual are not as usual. The things which are running the way they are not as usual. Why? Because world is a marketplace. We are affected now by things happening in Ukraine, or things happening in maybe China, or things happening in any part of the world, or the pandemic as such has pushed us into different ways of working, which we call a new normal. Why it's called a new normal? Because now we have to adapt to change. The only constant today is change. And the organizations represented here, very large organizations, which I happen to have a very personal touch with them, like L&T, Tata Projects, Ashoka Buildcon, Moglix, and Adani Airports. They all are working in such a space where they have so many variables to tackle. And they have so many things which can put their projects to a risk. So they have to actually think beyond the obvious. They have to think about the supply chains being smart. They have to think about the sourcing being scalable. They have to think about environment because that affects them. They think about the labor supply, which is so crucial. The technology, the measurement, performance metrics, how efficiently we'll work. They talk about lean management, talk about things like ESG, environmental and social governance. So all that is happening in this space. And believe me, it's a tough job because site is such a thing where if everything is normal, that means you're not working. On a project site, things will go wrong on a day-to-day basis. and that is the indicator the site is working. If it is not, then probably your site is not really performing that well. So with the people on the panel, we expect their ideas, which in fact they are doing. Their organization are pioneering in many ways to change the industry, the face of the industry. And while we learn from the panel, we also have the insights. They have worked in various positions abroad in various projects of very large magnitude. And that insight is so crucial for us to understand and adapt and adopt the same for the projects which we are doing or which we are engaging in, or in the future. We will know what is there to expect, because these people are in the line of fire, if you allow me to call that. They are doing the work as usual, and they are doing work with everything happening around them, including the political upheavals, which you know in the 5 states elections are happening. So how much frenzy the whole country is in. So that's the scenario, and that's the background of this whole discussion. So I'll start with Mr. Barun Pal. Pal Sahab, I want you to know the insight of what you think is your experience about disruption, and how the industry is adopting to it, and what are the measures they would like to take to make sure that we are not out of the race. And this question is common, starting with Barun Palji, then I'll go across to the audience the same question and seek responses. So Barun Palji, all yours, sir.
Thank you, Rajiv. First, let me, say you have said so much that I have to actually take a link from there and the leaf from there to move on, because your experience, I think, is enormous. You have actually summed up so much in such a little time. Before I start, I want to say, there has always been a perception about the infrastructure industry, and this perception has been, like it is a very unorganized, it is very labor intensive, it is second highest employer. So when you talk of all this industry, it is very redundant in accepting new process. It's a brick and mortar industry, so it was more of a physical part of things. And slowly, if you see, the infrastructure has moved on from physical to a service industry, because interconnectivity of infrastructure has become the theme. That means you no longer see an infrastructure good if it doesn't give you the proper service. If I take an example of a airport, you don't see an airport how large it is, you don't see an airport how beautiful it is, but you see an airport how efficient it is. So if Singapore airport has been always been voted as one of the best airport, because it is with the least effort and least confusion you are boarding your flight. So that means what you are voting for is not the airport but the services of the airport. And I think we as infrastructure player are slowly trying and understanding that we need to change our mindset. This disruption is change in our mindset from delivering a product to delivering a service. And the moment we talk of delivering a service, I think infrastructure players need to overhaul their thinking, overhaul their entire process from top to bottom to adapt to this requirement of new normal. And the new normal is everybody is expecting a service out of the infrastructure that we are delivering. So if we see this now, what is the changes which has come along is the second part. The changes has been what? Changes has been, we have been seeing that the robotics is a new thing, artificial intelligence, IoT is coming up. I think BIM model has been there, big data, 3D printing. So it is a combination of IT and technology, which is, suddenly taken this industry by storm. And this is really a major thought process, which all these industries, big shots, big companies are really struggling and trying to find out how to adopt to this and how to, come up to this occasion to deliver what is needed, because the demand is of service, not of a product. So if I see from this perspective, a lot of things will be changing in the industry itself. What are these changes which are going to come up to for us to stay up to them is very important. So one, I think in the disruption process will be, the entire infrastructure is getting connected to the wider built environment. So it is not a standalone. Now, so what will be the changes? First change, I think a lot of consolidation in the industry is going to take place. That means all these big players, whether you name Tatas or L&Ts or Ashokas or Adanis, somewhere they will be consolidating and exchanging their informations, because we have to get connected. Maybe one infrastructure is built by other, the other will be built by another, and there has to be interconnect, like an ATM machine today. The banks have got a centralized system because you are able to use the ATM. So similarly, I think a lot of consolidation of data will start happening, which we should be ready for, how do we do it. Second, I think is we will move on from an unskilled labor thought process to a very high skilled labor, because now technology and service providing will be the required areas where very high skilled laborers will be required. That means training will become very important on technology. So that's another thing which I feel is going to see a dramatic rise in the way we are looking at things as an organization. How do I train up to my lowest level of the providing service to this infrastructure industry? Another thing which is there is, it is going to become multifunctional, as I said. So how do I become multifunctional is better collaboration has to happen. So better collaboration will be very important. So we have to be all prepared to see how do we become anticipatory and proactive for a better collaboration. Because without that, I think it will be very difficult to have interconnectivity and wider connectivity among the infrastructure. Another thing which I think will pick up is off-site construction, because the pandemic and all this has taught us how things are going to change. So one of the critical disruption is we always used to think on-site construction. Now I think off-site construction will be the end thing. And we are all, I think, preparing ourselves, be it 3D technology, be it in precast construction. We are all trying to see off-site construction. And also one thing is happening is off-site project management. That means we are all preparing to have a war room like a situation where we can manage all the projects through a central monitoring system rather than any on-site. Like I will say you have a air tower controls, traffic control system. See, they manage all the flights. So here also we are actually planning and working, and I can foresee an area where we will be having something like that, war rooms, where we'll be monitoring everything through a central system, so that I can switch my resources very fast. Another thing which is going to act as a disruption is improved quality of health and safety. This pandemic has taught us how do we improve the health and safety of on-site team, which is huge, because that impacts most of the projects into the infrastructure. And obviously, in conclusion, I would like to say, probably I'll say infrastructure now needs to come out of its traditional mindset and break the shackles. And as you say, change is the only constant.
Thank you, sir. That was superb flow of ideas from a person like you who has seen industry in a very macro and micro way. In fact, when you said an airport needs to have efficiency, I remember when I was taking a flight back home from Frankfurt, it took me 1.5 hours to reach my airport gate terminal. And I thought Frankfurt was in Germany, and Germany is, of course, the big brother Europe and the most advanced country. Then I went to Hong Kong. Hong Kong, again, the same thing. The airport had a metro rail. Mr. Day is listening to me. Maybe he will have his ideas later. It sounded very good to have metro inside the airport, but it again took an hour to go to the gate. And how relaxed we are when you go to Delhi airport and we say gate number 37 Air India, which is a 3-minute walk. And we feel happy that Air India, we have boarded Air India flight. Otherwise, if I board Sri Lankan Air flight, I will have to go to gate number 54, which is again a 45 minutes walk in the Delhi airport. So as you said rightly, the user is your judge, and the user will judge you whether you have used your right brain or left brain in planning the whole thing. So next, coming to somebody who is doing it in a very big way is Tata Projects. Mr. Bhattacharjee, your views on what you are seeing happening around you, your experience, and some words which you feel we should look at in the future, Mr. Bhattacharjee.
Right. So thank you, Mr. Rajiv. First of all, I'd like to thank the construction world for giving me this opportunity for sharing this web platform with eminent leaders of the industry. And my heartfelt thanks to Moglix also for patronizing this wonderful event. Coming to our, disruption in construction world, entire construction world, Mr. Varun has, beautifully explained. There are a lot of changes happening, a lot of dramatic changes, I would add, in our industry because of various reasons, COVID, disruption at various, part of the world, which are creating the challenge for this industry, infrastructure industry. And with investment coming up in infrastructure, which are really scalable. So therefore, without technological upgradation, it is difficult to achieve, what we want to achieve. So for sustainable growth, uh, to complete any project safely within time, within cost, and without any wastage. Disruption in technological thing is order of the day. So what I see, mainly three part of disruption or adoption of technological advancement will happen. One is our traditional work. We are doing a lot of activities at various sites, which are more or less repetitive in nature. For example, like laying of brick, road paving, painting, such kind of things. Will I think in near future robotic will take place, and slowly a few of the organization are also trying to adopt a robotic thing like cage making machine and all. Already it has introduced to Indian market. So this is first part. Secondly, I feel Mr. Borun has touched upon this is precast construction. So converting cast in situ into precast would be the answer. But only challenge or bottleneck, what I feel, even though the structure is same, you have we have a problem with the design, the dimensions. So therefore, these are affecting the going large scale automatic precast yard. So therefore, the cost of optimization for the investor is not happening. So therefore, maybe that would be also another area if the owner of the projects decides or they engage to standardize the structures, which will help to scale the precast factories. And then final thing, what I feel, the digitization in terms of design, planning, as well as the control measure. So these already it has started happening in India. Most of the organization are adopting to these. But of course, the perfection or the optimum output is we are yet to receive. I'll highlight few example since I'm handling the plant and machinery, uh, like GPS. It's GPS enabled machines. Now we are attaching GPS device to our equipment. For small example, like trailer, which is carrying the material from place A to place B. So with the help of geofencing, you are controlling, the movement of the vehicle as well as pilferage. You are stopping. If it is going out of the route, you can cross check. You can find out what has happened, what has gone wrong with it. So therefore, immediately you can find out, what are the root cause of the pilferage. So thereby you can stop that. Similarly, like fuel sensor, then RPM meter, measurement. We are using now extensively all across our projects site, which is giving rich dividend for us. So that is what I feel is going to happen in next near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for this insight. And if I'll just share with you, sometimes I feel we are too late, and the practices we do are in silos. The GPS system for tracking movement of material was actually first introduced in the KL Twin Towers in 1990s, when we were doing the Kuala Lumpur Twin Towers. So we could track the supply of steel or other things on the site. So it was first done, and then we forgot about it. And then, then now it's a need of the app. So then again, I asked about this precast. Precast is the need. Obviously, we all will agree that it is 25-30% more expensive because we are comparing it with conventional construction, which we should not compare because it's a different speed altogether. But there is a problem which is linked to our IS standards. So if you know, for precast, there is no IS code on jointing the precast elements. So we have to depend more on the British codes or the South African codes or other maybe ASTM or ASC codes. So there is also take up. I sit on a lot of committees of Indian standards, CED 44, CED 46. So we know a lot of catch-up has to be done by the standards organization like BIS to make sure that the speed in which you want to improve the sites or do the disruption, they also have to fall in place. I was just reading the NBC code, which is the new one, which is 15,644 pages. And in one page, it is written that if you want to make a 2-bedroom apartment, the minimum size of one bedroom should not be less than 90 square feet. And it's a small para, and one should be 120 square feet. So if you want to, and it's a huge document. So how to make that workable? In fact, a lot of things they have now specified about environment, about using BIM as a protocol, maybe 4D, 5D. I'm sure you will talk about it. All of us, Mr. Chandran is an expert on that area. So things are happening, but I think there is our silos coming in. So probably now the disruption would be to break those silos that Mr. Parunpal said, have a consolidation approach where everything is together and everything falls into place. So Abid, you are the youngest mind around, of course, a great mind. So Abid, what is your experience and understanding of this disruption, and how do you feel and think it will affect us in the future? Abid.
Thank you, Rajiv. And it's indeed a privilege to be in the midst of industry stalwarts like the co-panelists. So first and foremost, I think we are in a very interesting time in the phase of our country, and all of everyone here would agree that the government has been the biggest disruptor, especially in the current budget. So you have a massive 35% plus jump in terms of capex that has been announced. And I was actually going through a little bit of data. And if you look at central government expenditure as a percentage of GDP, from the 2000s all the way up till 2015, 2016, it was about it hovered between 1.7 to 2%. Over the last 1 or 2 years, we have seen that jump to 3.5%. So just the very thought that India, which has historically been plagued by low infrastructure, that there needs to be a massive shift forward, I think that impetus has been firmly laid. A company like Moglix, we are in fact in the midst of disruption, and we are essentially suppliers to the large EPC players, in fact, to many in the panel as well. So we look at ourselves as disruptors in our own way, and believe that we can work with various large companies to enable a more seamless supply chain of materials, that we can become more reliable partners who provide materials on time, in full, and of the highest quality. So again, going back to a little bit of data, so the construction and infra sector, not just in India, but globally, has been probably a low performer in terms of disruption. Why I say it? One, so McKinsey had conducted a data on labor productivity. So from the 1980s all the way till about the late 2000s, we saw that labor productivity for infra rose only about 1%, whereas the same for manufacturing was almost 3.6%, and overall for all the sectors combined was close to 3%. So that kind of shows that the innovation that befitted the manufacturing and other sectors was probably not to the same extent in the infra sector. Again, there are variations. A country like China during the same period actually saw a massive jump, and we saw labor productivity rise in the infra sector rise by almost 7.5 to 8%. So there are good examples as well. where there has truly been innovation in terms of how the construction works. Now, I feel for India, especially in the near future, there are 5 dimensions on which disruption can truly happen. The first and foremost, I think, in any infra project, the biggest constraint is the non-linearity of, you can say, production, because you have very different processes happening at the same time. So what is needed is project management to an enormous scale. So project management softwares, tools, and their incorporation in the entire design to implementation process, I think, is going to be the first lever of disruption. The second lever of disruption is around building materials. I think still we are there has been very less innovation around how building materials can save time and cost. We have seen some good examples, for example, how fly ash is now used for bricks, which has not just brought about a revolution, but has also improved environment. So I'm sure that a massive thrust around building material innovation is needed. And in association with the various institutes, I think India can become a forerunner for it. And a lot of the companies here also will emerge as front runners in driving this through. The third major lever for disruption is going to be around sustainability. Unfortunately, infrastructure also has a massive carbon footprint that needs to be mitigated in some form. You cannot do away with it, but what you can aspire is how do I reduce it? And the thought towards this is going to bring in a lot of disruption, not just in building materials, but also in processes. And I think this should be the third lever of disruption. The fourth lever is partnerships. So I think Mr. Barun mentioned that how can there be consolidation? So we look at consolidation as having one goal, but you have multiple people trying to fulfill it. So, I mean, just to give you an example, there could be a drone company which comes in and gives very, very regular updates on the actual project status in combination with, say, a L&T or Ashoka Buildcon or a Tata Projects. And similarly, maybe someone like Moglix who actually becomes the procurement as a service partner for a large number of companies. So that is the fourth. And I think the fifth dimension is, again, regulation. So we need a much more simplified regulatory environment to actually drive disruption in its truest essence. Very often, especially with the way the tender process functions, it actually inhibits innovation rather than promoting it. So these are my 2 cents on how disruption is going to happen.
Amit, they were not 2 cents, they were a good dollar, no problem. That's a superb sum up of your thoughts. And things are changing because I saw some contracts being bailed out at the LCA, life cycle costing analysis in place, not the L1 or L2, which is happening. And it's also coming to India, which probably is happening in the Middle East now, that many tenders are linked to forward lean engineering costing. You do lean, whoever does the highest lean costing, he gets the contract. Things are changing because clients want to build projects, but they don't have the money. So it's happening, and probably that is one more aspect which is, I'll say, non-technical in terms of the contracts formulation. We are following FIDIC, and there are a lot of contracts happening in the world. If you know, NEC 3, 4, UK is following JCT 90. The AS 4000 is in Australia. I work with NZ 3910, which is in New Zealand, because I handle Asia Pacific from RICS side. So we know what's happening in the world as a whole. So a lot of disruption is happening even in the format of regulation, as you said rightly. One report of ILO said that the Indian labor in India has a total work output of 4 hours on the site, whereas the Indian labor in Middle East gives an output of 6 hours and 20 minutes. So the same way is labor, the same skill, the same temperament, but it's the change of location which probably drives it most. So coming back to Mr. Day, sir, you are at a hot seat both in terms of the construction and in terms of the UP elections in Lucknow. So, sir, from you, would like to know your experience and how you would look at disruption in the years to come, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, Construction World, for this opportunity. See, one thing when if I have to recollect the way we used to do projects when we started off in this industry, I think we have moved a long way. It's not a small journey we had. Those were the days I started off as a hydropower engineer, and I recollect the first few projects which we used to do in 12 years time, 10 years time. When I started off, some projects we just started 12 years before were just getting completed. And then somewhere around 1996, 2000, started this concept of completing hydropower projects in 4 years. And these things are not possible without disruption. So disruption has always been the driving force for whatever change we look at. You can never bring a change without a disruption. This is happening in the construction industry. But at this point, there are two things which we look for. Like if I have to take from what Mr. Barun said, that airports, because presently being in airport, that becomes my very passionate subject now. So looking at airports, yes, I do agree with Mr. Barun that airports has to be functionally very high at service level. But if you really look a little beyond that, airport is also seen as a reflection of your city's starting point. You cannot afford to have a normal building to support as an airport any longer. We had those buildings. It's not that we did not have those buildings. We had those buildings which were functional. At that point, functionality was the only importance and connectivity was the important part. But as we move forward, we are also integrating airport as a gateway to your city, gateway to your town, gateway to the tier 3 cities. And today we are talking of Udan, which will connect to the different destinations for the tourism sector. Looking at this, like the concept we talk about, when I look at maybe the Lucknow airport, I want to have customers come in and say that yes, I'm entering Lucknow. If we have to build just concept-based or service-based airports, I think all the airports, or if not all, 99% of the airports around the world would look the same. There would be no Mumbai International Airport, which is called the architectural marvel of airports today. Or there would be no Delhi Airport, which would be maybe the largest airport with a very good T3 coming up. And no doubt to say that this all has to be balanced with the service. Being good airport does not mean that it just looks good. It has to feel good. And that is where the service factor comes. So these are the challenges we are facing. And technology, of course, is the disrupting factor here, because the only level of service improvement I think I can think about is when the human intervention reduces and automated interventions start coming. That is when you can actually give that feel of better service, better coordinated service every time, one time, every time. So that is again the concept of Six Sigma, which today people might say it is an old concept, but I still believe in that concept, because Six Sigma is all about making good every time what you do the first time. So with all this, without technological disruptions, these are not going to come through. Then we are also challenged with the thought of now if I have to start a new airport, the timelines given for the airports are really very short. Now, how do we disrupt that? How do we disrupt that? Like nobody, maybe 20 years down the line, would have thought about that sea-link in Mumbai, which came up in a long time, take the same time for the present, that sea-link which is coming up for the new Navi Mumbai. But this is Amitabh ji is here. He can say he doesn't have the luxury of that timeline with Mumbai, Bandra Worli sea-link. So I don't really see a way where unless there is a disruption, these things can happen. So disruptions are happening. The question comes, what is the pace? Are we keeping with the pace at which the disruptions has to come in the Indian construction industry? Now, what I'll go back to what Abhit said. With the type of capex layout or spend layout that has been put in the budget by the government of India and various state governments also, it's a humongous task. And how many organizations do we have to really suffice to that today in the industry? If I really take away a few of the big players, we are left with players who are nowhere close to living up to that level of I would say competition, or that level of progress and productivity which is required. So that is another disruption in my opinion. We need to disrupt the industry in totality and look at how major players become support players for younger or less matured players who are in the industry but who has to contribute to achieve this dream of spending those infra funds which has been laid out in the budget. So I think everywhere we have to have these disruptions. We need to be concerned about the pace, because Abhit has rightly pointed out the quantum of allocations. But if we look at the allocation versus the spend in the previous years, there is a big gap. So the disruption pace has to be what I'll be more concerned about today. The pace at which the disruption happens.
So very rightly, and while we are doing it in a pace, we should not forget that it should be holistic and not in piecemeal or in patches. So going on with this, going on to Mr. Chandran, sir, what is your experience of the disruption which you have seen over the years, and what you think will happen in the future, sir? Your words about this, sir. Mr. Chandran.
Thank you, Rajiv Nehru, and thanks to Construction World and partnering with Moglix and my fellow colleagues who are in the panel. Happy to be here with all of you and having heard from all of you eminent people. My point is that what are the disruption what we faced so far? Everybody knows that COVID-19 was a big disruptor, and everybody faced it in the way they have to face it. From the point of government, from the point of the state authorities, from the point of the private players, particularly in infrastructure. So most of the people were waiting for the moment to rebound on the situation where they were. The main hurdle what we faced was the labor, going away from the sites. The first pandemic had given a lot of pressure and trouble. Nobody was knowing what to be done. In fact, every department, you can say that, faced a disruption. No one can say that I have not faced this disruption. And infrastructure industry predominantly has come out very well, though they are the toughest area where people to bring back the people and then get aligned to the situation back. It's a very, very daunting task, which everybody has performed to the best. The question of managing the people is the one issue where when they come in, the supply chain also got disturbed in a big way, because every state had its own kind of regulations, materials coming, not coming, in some import orders getting stuck in some places. Okay, till recently it was all going up. People have tried to manage. This is a disruption. What I mean is, which is unknown. Like till 24th, Russian-Ukraine war was not a big talk in the world over. Okay, suddenly now the prices of crude has doubled now almost. Now this is a big disruptor. People who have thought about budget, whatever is done in January is now going to go for a revised approach. Therefore, this is the disruption we are talking today. Whatever we face disruption is the manageable, somewhat known disruption, except that COVID-19, whatever we call. Going forward, what I feel is the disruption is going to be like this only. Suddenly, FDIs are going to withdraw funds. Suddenly, they're going to pump in funds. You can't predict what is going to happen in the market, and what a lot of startup companies are coming up. The people may focus on those kind of areas where the upcoming young demography is thinking about entertainment, lifestyle, and all those things. Where infrastructure, the people have to spend a little bit more time than the other industries. Therefore, future disruption is going to be mainly on the first level. If we say the skill category of men or even women. Maybe women may come in a large manner in future, because most of the things are handled in offline, or we can sit in some place and operate, work from anywhere. That approach is going to happen, as we have seen that some of the attributes are definitely converted into virtual model, like quality inspection, safety monitoring systems, workman entry, coming out, and engineering designs. Many of the areas which is not real supervision, and what we have to upskill is the frontline supervision, which we call it. They have to be trained very well in mobile applications and all these things. They will be trained. The disruptor, what I am expecting is that every worker is very much aware about the applications, what is there available in the mobile. Maybe they are more tuned to that because they are all youngsters. They are all coming up, work population is 25, 30, 20, 22. They are coming inside the market. Therefore, if you give them some mobile and everything, they may be able to enter whatever the works they have to do, whether they complied or not. We were always taking benchmark from international market, which is not so. I will feel in India, the skill level can be improved because we are not giving them the necessary tools and tackles. The craneage is what is available in Dubai or in Gulf countries. If you give them, they can also improve the productivity. The construction materials which is available in China for finishing a floor, they give the trims and shims and all those things. The labor comes just like them, fix it, finished quality comes out better. Whereas we give a small age-old tool, a cutting tool, and then ask them to cut to 90 degree. Maybe the tools and tackles and all those things, what accessories what we have to provide will improve the skill level, not by only asking them to use fan and motor and all those things. Not going to help anybody. Even if you put a Chinese worker in Indian condition, I feel the quality of work and productivity will be down. It is not that workers creating problem. Maybe some area, when they come fresh, maybe they require some orientation, training, and all those things. I think that sphere has to be thought about from the industry, in the infrastructure people have to think about that. Second one comes after the men, come up to the plant and machinery, which is a huge investment which has been made by all the companies in the infrastructure in particular, be it road or bridge or whatever you call it. Huge equipments are going to be deployed. If you don't have the skill level of people or the people by itself, then the equipments are going to be idle. So if we have to analyze the situation, and the information management is going to be very important now, because we are going to handle large projects, and large projects, even the project director or the particular construction manager may not be having the facility to see it personally, which physically there in the particular location. He has to again have some kind of tools and tackles or digital instrument to monitor that. Therefore, the situation and the circumstances have to be created such a way that he is able to be living in the project, though he is not physically in the location. So all the machineries will be through machine learning and artificial intelligence. Soon it will get converted. Though we have now transformed some of the areas from the past, some of the old equipments are now transformed, and some of the equipment suppliers are even willing to create a dashboard, and they have to give me simple. Suppose if you purchase a crane, why should I put a sensor there? You should tell me like, any mixer or grinder. They should tell this is the capacity it is to be used, this is the skill level it is to be used, and if you use differently, what is the output coming? Therefore, all the equipment manufacturers with the Atmanirbhar scheme and Make in India scheme, they can improvise those software and hardware into their equipment instead of construction people going and installing something. It's not going to be big cost because, if it's 1.5 crore equipment of a tower crane or something, installing 10 lakhs of worth material of software and hardware is not going to cost them much, and people will buy it also. Otherwise, why somebody has to go and install it? What happens is what is the capacity of the machine? What is the actually output it is going to come as per the manufacturer specification? Like a car. The car, they say 240 kilometer speed is the dial gauge which shows. And what they recommend is go top speed 180. That 180 we can go for 1 minute or half a minute only. Real speed is 120 if you are regularly driving. That's how it is. Therefore, we will prescribe what is the output which will come through the machine. Then we monitor, okay, 120 is coming or not. We should aspire for 120 plus 10%, 20%, fine. Therefore, the benchmarking has to be created in the digital setup. That could be a disruptor currently to happen. Going forward, it can be intelligently managed, sitting from somewhere. Even driverless operation can happen with the kind of things happening all over the globe. Therefore, going forward after 10 years, I see construction in a different scale because $63 trillion is the scope which global infrastructure industry is talking about. And almost the opportunities in India's favor, well, everybody is looking at India now. Unlike we try to look at something outside, Gulf and all is gone, seen now. Entire investment, anywhere some development happens, it's India's to go and happen. Therefore, we have a big market here, and there were a lot of opportunities for upcoming, construction people also. New contractors have come up and all these things. As of now, it's all fine because the values were manageable, the volumes were manageable, and the timelines also manageable. Going forward, the government is going to ask you to increase the speed by 10 times. not 1 or 2 times. Earlier, what we used to do, 24 kilometers of a viaduct or something in 4 years. Now they're asking 240 kilometers for me to do in 4 years. Therefore, the things are going to change in a big way in terms of commitment to the customer, and customers have become more and more aware. You imagine government now is talking much more digital than private players. They are able to monitor. The state chief ministers are monitoring to digital, the real live progress. Therefore, time has come for the infrastructure industry as a whole to gather the thoughts and processes on men, material, machinery, on the products and processes, along with skill upgradation. Have to be looking for the future, think differently, and approach the problems in a very, very special manner. Each of them will have their own unique, situation. It has to be dealt very, very innovatively, creatively, not the old way I did it sometime back in 2 years back, and I will follow the same road. Is not going to apply. This is my thought process on the present disruption, what we have come across so far. And going forward is going to be again unknown, and we should be ready to face it. And hopefully the industry will face it, and we have that skill level to do that. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir, for a holistic insight about this disruption. As you said rightly, even the government companies or the public sector companies have a system called Saksham, which I was
You are muted. You are muted.
Sorry, I was so anxious to talk that I forgot to unmute myself. Sir, that was a great insight of what you said in a holistic way. I remember, sir, these PSUs and the government companies also have a system called Saksham, which measures the productivity of all officers, engineers up to the director on a day-to-day basis with regard to projects. I'm talking about a company like IRCON. So they are also monitored. It's not just like they have PM within PMO. There are dashboards, and they are very keen to make the speed of construction as fast as possible. So that all is happening. So coming back to Mr. Chaudhary, infrastructure investment effect on FDI, effect on GDP. Sir, your thoughts on that, sir?
Rajiv, it's a good question, but if I can just touch upon something from the previous thing for a moment.
Sure, sir. Sure. Go on.
One thing was very interesting which has come out is the speed of the disruption. And I think that was a very key word, and I thought I will share in a project. Actually, by the time I start the project and I end the project, there is a disruption. So the speed is so fast today in the world of disruption. The technology of a very critical project we were working on, and after 2 years while I was commissioning, handing over, I understood that technology is virtually obsolete, and my problem was that had a DLP of 5 years. And that kind of so future thinking and understanding, that means the specialization of the subject matter is becoming more important today. While making a hospital where you have, let's say, the equipment as part of your scope. So today it is becoming that we understand that we need specialty segment people who are subject matter experts to be part of the team. So this speed and coping up with the speed has become enormous. So that one disruption is probably in infrastructure. You will see a lot of subject matter experts who will be coming into play to take a very key role in future. So coming to your question, I think it's a wonderful question, because I think infrastructure, FDI, GDP is a big discussion these days. See, what I believe is every government, it's what we have studied in colleges. Every government tries to give a push. It's like a cycle. It tries to give a push on the infrastructure, and that push on the infra, generates employment. If it generates employment, it increases your per capita income. So while your per capita income increases, it moves into spending power. Spending power creates a demand and obviously the supply. And if demand and supply is there, obviously industrialization takes place, because FDI wants to move in, because they see all this as positivity. And the moment FDI comes in, obviously it goes back to your GDP and it increases your GDP. The cycle gets complete. And that's how I see that every government in every country pushes it. And that's exactly, if you see today, what has been happening in our country. And as Abid said, a great push of more than 30% in the infra sector in this budget was a direct understanding of this principle by the government, where, infrastructure is a popular form of fiscal stimulus. And the government, by doing that, which we rightly said, is trying to, create that economic stimulus wherein we will be indirectly impacting upon our GDP, and obviously the whole economy will be driven differently. So if I come to this, as he said, there is a huge increase of 2.9% in the GDP. So how government is trying to do this is important. What are the tools and policies and thought process government has done? So one of them, I think, is the PM Gati Shakti, which we all know is trying to really boost the infrastructure segment. And what they're trying to do, we really need to understand this. This is a very, very good policy, which I believe is they're trying to, include railways, airways, airports, mass transportation, waterways in a big push. And this, I think, any country which gets a push in the logistic and connectivity, I think gets a huge support from the, it gives a huge confidence to the financial companies to come and do an FDI into industrial output. Because I think industrial output becomes failure if it doesn't have a right logistic support, whether it is man movement or material movement, or pre-sales or post-production, whichever it is. So I think PM Gati Shakti that way is going to be a fantastic kind of a game changer for the next couple of years. And obviously to that, I think they are not leaving aside the Parvatmala. We must understand that the ropeways are again an extension of this, which is going to help in a big way. And the next one I'll say is the CapEx. The way they are working on is the NIP, the National Infrastructure Pipeline, where I think a lot of projects are already under progress. I think nearly out of 2,000 plus odd projects which are under the NIP, I think 35% of the projects are, or 40% of the projects are underway. So I think by 2025, we will be able to see the result of it. And the rest of the projects which are in the pipeline are going to really play a great role in enhancing and promoting the confidence in the investors. And that will obviously become a key point for having a larger FDI confidence, where people will see lesser risk in investing in the country. Very less risk. And I think this is where I think our, we'll be getting a step closer to our $5 trillion economy. So increase in FDI is the key thing. So by increasing the infrastructure, giving a push to the infrastructure, we are trying to increase the FDI by making the trade and commerce become easier. But said that, I think Abid has picked up a very good point that just supporting the infrastructure will not get you FDI. So there are two ways how to get FDI. One is this, and another, Abid said, is fantastic, which we all believe is regulation and policies. So regulation and policies added to this infrastructure will, I think, make the risk perception and the of the investing financing bodies, and that is where I think we are now moving towards as a country, and that will increase our FDI. And if FDI is coming, we will be able to actually get the secondary support of increasing our GDP, and obviously, which I think as a country we are going to move ahead much faster and much stronger. And the vision is, what I see is development of infrastructure, creating connectivity, increasing FDI, increasing GDP, having more power, and the cycle moves on. And that's what I would like to say on this.
So thank you very much. I think this question could have a better answer than what you just said. And I was reading that we were called a green economy from years together, since the British left us. And then I realized that the agriculture economy is just 15% of GDP. The remaining 85% doesn't come from there. It comes from services and manufacturing. Those services are large quantum. So we have to change the mindset. From there, coming to Mr. Bhattacharya, sir, infra companies have hurdles, skill, tech availability of labor, technology, finance. So how do you think we can survive in the age of disruption on these accounts, Mr. Bhattacharya?
Yeah, right. So wonderful question. So as all the panelists has told about the growth. So with the growth, and delivery stress, timeline has shortened. So therefore, thereby it has increased the challenge for supply chain management, availability of skill force, and availability of advanced technology. We are talking about robotics and all. So these are real challenge. In coming days, how we are going to resolve those issues would define our path for the robust construction. And so for that, coming to the supply chain, basically, if you see, most of the organization faces supply chain related problem. The main contributor is the specification of the component which we are going to buy is not clear. Unfortunately, in construction industry, this is a very common factor. So most of the time, even if you have placed your order, you have to again go back to the drawing board, and again, because of change of the specification, you renegotiate. So thereby it is creating an issue. So thereby, therefore, what at the beginning I have told, standardization of the structure as well as the specification, if we can do, so which will help us to fix the component. That is the point number one. Second is the identification of the reliable vendor. So at the moment, we do not have a appropriate, identification of reliability factors for the vendors. So basically, we need to have a robust platform, of course, through IT system, which will measure the safety parameter, quality parameter, and timely completion, and the cost parameter of the vendors for a longer period. So that, after a certain period of time, you understand this, reliability index of that particular vendor is this much. Second is the, standardization of the component will help us to, go for as a platform like Moglix, where directly the user can directly indent, and the site can directly buy from that. So you have a rate negotiation there, but primarily you need to have a standard specification. Important factor of the analysis of entire purchase cycle is happening manually at the moment, largely to some extent, I would say, through Excel base. So from Excel base to the integrated IT system and application of the artificial intelligence would be the key for future SCM process management, I believe. Coming back to our second point, which is skill availability, is a real challenge for today's scenario. With many projects coming up, it would be a real challenge how we manage our site progress. So to summarize the skill availability, I would like to divide the entire workforce into three categories. Basically, of course, category based on the educational competency, below 10th standard, undergraduate, and highly educated, like graduate and above. So below standard, 10th standard, if you see, there is no formal education hub. is not available at the moment in the country. And most of our carpenter, reinforcement binder, formwork fitter, equipment operator comes from that category. So if along with the industry, if government can push on development those skill set formally with proper training module which is related to the industry, I think in the longer run it will help to supply the workforce to the construction field. Secondly, the undergraduates who already we in India through this ITI we are developing electrician, mechanic, but the number of people coming out and the demand is there is a huge gap. So that needs to be closed. That is the thing. And for the highly qualified team member, as you know, the construction industries has a problem of defining proper career path for those highly qualified people. So thereby, this is the least importance given by any engineering graduate to join a construction company. So this is the he or she will think if he is not getting anywhere, then only he will prefer for the construction industry. That mindset needs to be changed. The organization should think on how they will define the career path of those team member whosoever is joining the organization. So there should be a clear roadmap for them, and that should be transparently told to the those who are joining. So that is one important thing. And secondly, the appropriate remuneration. So with that, I believe going forward, we can handle the skill scarcity to large extent. And finally, the this tools and technology. We have already discussed the introduction of robotics, then autonomous equipment, which is also now coming up, all across. I think CAT has done a lot of experiment along with the Volvo. Then use of drones, which are happening in India. In fact, we have also, many of our projects we are using for putting the stringent cable for our electrical lines. Use of drone is happening. Then for surveying and all, these are also another area of drones to be used. Moreover, from the traditional things, we have to switch into the automatic zone. Just for example, like at the moment, we are erection is happening all across for the heavy concrete structure. Even today, we are using the normal cranes and all, which are we have seen many incident and accident as well as the productivity issue. The real challenge of placing a crane at a congested city like Mumbai is a real challenge. So therefore, like use of hydraulic launching girders, more and more use of launching girders, straddle carrier will, to large extent, I believe it will help. I think straddle carrier will be used already being used in a few of the metros and high-speed rail. So these are the main areas or implementation of the automations will help in the longer larger way to the construction, improving the construction industry's efficiency.
No, superb articulation. Thank you very much for that. Coming to Abid, the India infra growth story. What are the parameters governance you feel are supporting it? Are any myths, fancies, or reality linked to it? Abid, quick response.
Yeah, thank you, Rajiv. So for me, governance basically means what was desired. Is it being implemented in the right fashion in a timely manner? So there's a maxim which says what cannot be measured cannot be improved. So I think governance is at the heart of that maxim. But having said that, in the construction sector, generally almost every project is in a very, very time-tight schedule. So it's also essential that in the name of governance, we do not over-regulate and bring in more interdependencies per se. So I would like to divide governance into three, again, buckets in the basis of interaction. So the first bucket is the government departments and the EPC companies. The second bucket is the EPC companies and the internal processes. And the third is the EPC companies and the subcontractors or the vendors or the other partners that are there. In terms of the first bucket, which is the government and the EPC, I believe there were certain other panelists who already spoke about it. I think two very interesting projects that are ongoing. One is the project monitoring group. Project monitoring group, basically any project which is greater than 500 crore, whether the environmental clearance is in place, whether the interministerial approvals are going through on time, gets monitored. And this is, I believe, placed under the Cabinet Secretariat, now moved to the DPIIT. So it is definitely increasing the speed and at the same time increasing governance and also reducing the silos of government approvals, which is one of the biggest headaches in terms of execution. Another is Gati Shakti, which already got spoken about, because not just you measure where the projects are coming up, but at the same time, at the planning stage itself, you take into consideration what are the other infrastructure projects happening nearby so that synergies can be developed. Also, another thing that got mentioned in this year's budget, I've not seen the implementation as of now, but hopefully should get implemented, is the online tracking of bills. Every EPC company that we speak to, I think the biggest challenge they face is getting bills cleared on time. And that ultimately not just affects the EPC companies, but also the entire ecosystem. I think if we have greater trackability and we are able to speed up the bill clearances by the government, I think that should make the health of the entire ecosystem much better. And hopefully we'll see some progress around it. Coming to the second bit, which is within the EPC companies, how is governance measured? What are those parameters? I think first and foremost is digitization. There is a report by Autodesk and IDC which states that 72% of the construction companies in India are only in the first phase of maturity, and only about 3% are in the third, which is the final phase. Probably some of the companies here would be among the final phase, but a large part of the Indian construction industry is still in very early maturity phase. What that means is people are still just about developing CRM systems. As such, maybe you still have a CRM system, it's probably not even adopted fully. Whereas a mature phase, which happens in, say, a country like Japan or South Korea, is where you actually effectively use 3D technologies right from the planning phase to ensure speedier execution and more accurate execution. So I think that is the digitization initiative will be a major driver towards both governance, driving transparency as well as compliance at the sites. I think a lot of one major issue that a lot of EPC companies face is ad hoc cash purchases. Now, that is where a partnership, like for example, something like Moglix coming in, like Mr. Bhattacharya mentioned, which we have co-created with Tata Projects, where you have a digital catalog and everything standardized. I think that solves for some of these issues also. And that is also a major paradigm shift in terms of governance that can be brought about. I think the third important part and often most neglected part is the interaction between the larger EPC companies and the subcontractors. So while you have a lot of efficiency developed among the larger EPC companies, I think it's absolutely missing in the smaller companies. And here you will need the larger EPC companies to actually mentor the subcontractors, but also actively govern so that the quality standards and the other attributes are being effectively met. It also needs very heavy project management, external project management. And again, there are startups which are coming in to actually solve for this. But yeah, I think these are the three paradigms of governance which I thought would be relevant and which are shaping the industry as of today.
Thanks, Abhi. Thanks very much. Mr. Day, quickly on digitization, sir, where are we? What are the options and the gaps, sir?
To take this answer, I would actually like to divide the construction digitization broadly into two categories. One is the digitization of the on-table works, which I call as process digitization. And the second would be the execution digitization. In the process digitization, we have seen a lot of softwares coming in and at times it becomes confusing also. Which is better, which is not, what this provides, what that provides. By the time you take a call, like which would be best suited for you, project is already halfway through. The other part is the expertise level. The expertise level that is available for even the software implementations is a big gap, as Abid rightly said. Coming to the execution digitization, I think that is where there is a big gap. There is practically in the industry, except for a few major players, I don't see the execution digitization happening in any sector, and the few bigger players are too few to say. A lot has happened on the process digitization, but if I have to look at process digitization also, you will see that has helped in conflict management on the board, and this has certainly helped to some extent at the execution level, because when you use a software like a Revit or a Beam to find out your MEP related conflicts, you can easily do the minute changes that you need to do on the drawing board and push it onto the site. So that rework time is certainly reduced, and that is what maybe the first level, as Abid said, the first level of the efficiency improvement has happened, because we have seen projects coming down from 10 years duration to 5 years duration, 5 years duration to 3 years duration. But we need to now do more. Like if I have to talk of softwares like Civil 3D, again, it is a software on the table. But what the big deficiency that I see today is the digitization of the real-time execution. And that is where the physical effort is still very much prevalent. And that is where we talk about productivity of laborers, productivity of equipment. I'm really made to think, when are we going to move out of this thought process of productivity and concentrate more on sequencing the work better and getting the things, resources planning and more. When we talk of we are very good at taking some concepts like lean organization, but at what stage are we to manage a project with a lean organization? I really doubt that. I really have my own doubts. And in the name of lean organization, I have many times seen we cross the boundary and push over ourselves. Just give me a second. And push over ourselves to practically a weak organization. I would say there is a thin line between lean organization and the thin, weak organization. And we cross that boundary because we do not really have the right efficiency and tools to make a lean organization. That is where the gaps come in. Now, if I have to also see this, there is a integration gap.
We lost your day. I think we lost your connection. No problem. You can rejoin once you reboot the connection. So I will go to Mr. Chandran. Sir, BIM and digital twin, we are hearing them a lot.
That is another gap. So just
Mr. Day, please. Mr. Day, we had lost you for a moment. So please continue, sir. Yeah. Mr. Chandran, I'll come back to you in a minute.
Okay.
So this is creating a gap in the we clearly need a digital platform for the integration part as well. The forward integration and backward integration of the office process with the real-time ground process. Now, if I look at the gaps that exist today in a major way are, one is lack of intent to become capital intensive in execution. This is one thing which I have seen in the industry. We do not want to become capital intensive as an organization. We are dependent on subcontractors, equipment suppliers for our day-to-day heavy equipment needs. And this is where I feel there is a gap of a big time player who creates an equipment bank for the industry in totality. And that is where maybe once you create an equipment bank for the industry, you really drive in your effort to digitize the equipment itself. And that is where, unless the equipment is digitized, just putting a GPS or a real-time monitoring, in my opinion, is of no help. GPS can track your truck movement. GPS can track your train movements today. They are doing good, but that is only the logistics part. What about the real-time on-ground construction? Now, coming to upskilling of manpower, of course, that is one part which everybody has talked about. We also lack a digital supply chain integration. If I have to talk of today, this is a big time loss to the industry, that we are not having supply chain partners who have the right resources, both in terms of physical as well as digital resources. So in this case, it is very much predominant on the primary organizations, or I would say the big time players in the infra market, to do a hand-holding. If you really see how Japan or South Korea has grown, Abhit had made a reference to Japan and South Korea. But in Japan and South Korea, on one side there was a competition, on the other side there was hand-holding. Are the big industrial players ready to handhold their smaller partners and create a situation where we have seen today there is no dearth of job? Earlier, at one point of time, there was a big competition between who will get the project. But today, I think the quantum of job and the quantum of financial outlay is so huge that none of us should be worried about worried about our order if we are really keen to execute. But are we ready to handhold people who will help us do that also, is one thing that we need to see. COVID, of course, has led to a lot of fast tracking of digital disruptions. If I see in my organization itself, we have been pushing for a lot of process-oriented changes. But that in execution also, we have been trying to introduce some concepts of partnering with our contractors and sub-vendors to get the equipment with digital parameters built in. So I see a lot of opportunity for improvement. One concern point which I would certainly like to highlight to this forum is that in the whole of industry today, startup is a big concept, which is, startups are the major players in this digital disruption world today. But if I really look at the construction industry, we have very few startups working on anything related to construction industry. And that is where I think my major concern would lay today, because startups are going to be the trend of the future, and they are going to be the big disruptors of the future. If we can rope them in, there is no one who can stop us from being the best players in the world. Thank you. That's
thank you so much. So thank you so much. Just to give you information, I am Ahmedabad alumnus, and I am guiding 8 startups which are in construction, which are really disruptors. So offline we will share the details with you, sir.
Yeah.
And maybe you can use it sometimes. Coming to Mr. Chandan, sir, BIM Digital Twin. You're hearing this every time, sir. Tell us about it, sir. What are you doing as an L&T, and what do you think is the future, sir?
Yeah, this BIM and Digital Twin is the latest buzzword in the industry 4 atmosphere, particularly in the construction and infrastructure industry. And we were all used to that kind of project management, which has come as a PMBOK and all these things, where they taught the principles of project management and the knowledge management. That was all 10 years before we were seen. People were working on MS project, Primavera in particular, were considered as the best person for planning schedules and monitoring the projects. However, what happened in the course of time is the Primavera software became the baseline preparation document because it is spelled out in the contract. Many of the organizations used to hire some Primavera expert only for submission of the baseline schedule. Some of our projects also we did. Literally, there was no traceability between the baseline and actual field conditions for even the customer to monitor, or leave alone the contractor to say about. We put about 15,000 items, start to end, and with the 20-30 milestones, you give the breakup to them, and nobody is able to get that into the real situation, and we kept monitoring only 5-6 key parameters on the Excel sheet, and wherever it ended up, then we have to try for getting the extension of time if we are reasonable, and if it's not there, then the problem persisted. Thereby, a lot of projects have went into delay mode, and delay mode is one thing. Okay, then who are the people who are responsible for the delay is still a big question now. Today, a lot of issues are happening in terms of settlement of the issues because nobody is able to establish the delay itself first up. And if at all delay is established, who is responsible for what? Because there will be some concurrency, there will be parallel delays happening, sequential delays happening, all these issues are there. Now, good that people have talked about BIM and the implementation of BIM. Long back we have talked about, 10, 12 years back BIM was talked about, particularly in the building sector. They thought building information model means it's related to buildings alone. Actually, recent past only many people have understood it is building the information model. If you see in a large site of about 1,000 crores, if you are handling, almost 10,000 to 15,000 informations are passed, whether you like it or not, including the worker getting communicated on various activities, right from your process approval of purchase orders, work orders, and the related office communication, vendor inquiries. If you see, it's almost minimum 10,000 information, even by orally or something, which one person communicates, the other person understands in a different way. And if it's understood, how many people have to understand? That is also not clear. Earlier, we had some document control system or management system. All that was in a limited project, and people are able to really physically see and understand, sit in a meeting room and discuss. Now, situations have changed, which is, we call it as disruption. Now, there are partners who are available in the BIM atmosphere now. There are experts, particularly Europeans and Australians, have come in a big way, even in India. They are committing, and we are also working with them on the field BIM implementation, which you call it as BIM 360. The basic delay happens predominantly on infrastructure project is from the government side, because the starting date itself 6 months, they say they don't give the land. Therefore, now with the Gati Shakti, everybody has talked about, I have also closely associated with the program, in which government is mapping through the satellite, which is more accurate than the Google map. Because Google map picture also, if you say the right of way is 100 meter width, it will be showing differently at site, if you really go. Our own satellites are capturing the data live, which is more accurate. And they are planning itself such a way that the projects are not crossing the forest area and going. So while making the plan itself, all the latest projects, they are finding out how to avoid the area of interfaces we can't get the approval there easily. So without affecting most of the environmental and other aspects, they're trying to plan the project layout itself first, which they are telling that will be passed on during the tender itself, including the bore log details. This gives an ambit and a very good takeoff point for the construction people, because earlier what happened, you implement BIM, basic input itself is not available, land itself is not available. Now, at least in the base plan, you can take some of the clearances which are very clearly attributed to the customers or given a baseline date. Then there comes the other approvals which contractor is supposed to take. But these are the preliminary things, pre-construction start activities we call it. Most of the contractors or the infrastructure players never plan about these things. We straight away start, once you get the LOI, mobilize something and then go to the site and seek some information, and the client also expects the same. If you have to create a kind of situation where easily people can understand, which is through the 3-dimensional model, which anybody can take a model of the project. Now, even clients are giving, government clients are giving, as I told you, in the digital format of the drawings. Once it is given, a good engineering company or the person who is having good engineering tie-up can develop a model as quickly as possible, submit to the client and take the fundamental approval before we freeze the schedule, for which BIM is going to be very helpful to all of us. The basic engineering is over, therefore you're not going to have the basic changes on the concept. Once the concept is clear, the schedule can be at least more or less can be more accurate. Then what we are going to do is, the model is going to link with the schedule dates. And we are going to describe in the model itself that these are the dates, which is as per contractual milestones are encrypted onto that models, which will be approved by the customer. And we have to make a joint agreement. This is done. Then with the drone facility and everything, physically, you will be able to capture the videos and then put that on the superimpose onto the BIM model and see an actual date will be shown. Therefore, anywhere, somewhere the land is not given, no, suppose we have not, taken up that site, or right of way is not clear, or forest problem is there, it's not clear, or underground utilities are there. All that can be real time shown to the authorities, because otherwise they don't understand schedule explanation by our planning manager or planning in charge. You can't tell him, sir, this was that, nobody understands and agrees also. The dispute starts there, then who has to do what? Then everybody gets into the kind of problems. With BIM 360, the environment is created for 3D, and also you can also incorporate the fourth dimension of schedule and also the cost. We can also show the impact to them that this is what the timeline which has got affected because of this problem, and this is the cost impact of this. Added to that, the biggest disruption which so far I think nobody has touched about it. I am fortunate to have that opportunity to talk about that. The other factor is the ESC parameters, which everybody is aware about. This is going to be a big disruptor in future. It is not only the company is going to make profit on whatever they are doing, they are going to assure the ESC parameters, which is going to be our, even for the corporate as a sustainability point of view. So therefore, it's very important that in BIM 360 environment, we are able to create all the safety, quality, social parameters, the logistics, everything is integrated, not only our project logistics, other logistics, the society, whatever is linked, flora, fauna, everything is going to be linked. For example, you wanted to say, measure the air pollution level, parts per million, which they say 2.5 in city. All the SOPs, all the list of items which is spelled out in the contract will be captured in the BIM 360 atmosphere. Now, when you go on a field condition, there are gadgets available to measure the air quality. There are gadgets available to measure the decibels. Then real field, anything and everything, you can resolve this dispute at the point of time, very scientifically, very logically, very authenticatively. Then people cannot dispute that. Even the government authorities also, what they want is a field proof. They are not able to take a decision of supporting either the contractor or to the government because they are also not having enough information. The information modeling or the information efficiency is the lacuna here. If you are able to manage the information more precise, more scientific, more logical, more acceptable, then anybody will support either of the case. Now, once we have done that, we know what are the priorities can be done. Now we will have a debate. Okay, which one can be done, which cannot be done, all those things. This is not only for the project progress as a whole. Up to the Prime Minister level, now they are talking about is going to monitor only through this pictograph, real-time project monitoring, which he talks about, which is already started in many of the projects. Therefore, when at the highest level this is being driven, and we are supposed to get into this kind of momentum, and this is going to give a lot of good things to the industry because people who are just okay, there are times when people just have to take job and then work for how to manage within the cost. That situation is not going to come alive now. You have to work from the fundamentals because there are enough jobs, as he was telling. People have to work through the fundamental, find out what is the real thing which is there, what are the other risks involved in this. If you are doing that, what happens? The project gets completed on time and the contractor or the person who is developing also gets his bottom line without any issue. Therefore, I think the disruptor is going to be making the digital. Maybe it may sound a little bit of difficult issue because many a times I have seen these software guys never use the domain experts. Whereas if you see in automobile software and TCS is writing, they will take some automobile expert to say what are the issues which is coming in auto. Never you've seen in IT companies that if they are going to develop a portal or an application for construction, what stops them to use some of the experienced people there to use and give some service on quality and safety? What are the real issues coming? Therefore, it will be more relevant to the field condition. Otherwise, it is like App Store and Play Store. What do you have it? There are many applications. They say very well about it. Who is to use it? I don't use more than 4 or 5 applications in my iPhone. Everybody will be the same. Most of the people. There are hundreds of applications. What is the one application which will give me entire thing to me? It may be BIM 360 today, it may be some other else a little later. Currently, what is available is this. Therefore, digital twin is going to be the order of the day because today you are talking about this. Considering our satellite launch and everything, maybe after 10 years, we may get real, including myself, they can see.
So I think Abhit is listening to you because for him it may be a line of product. What he was saying in terms of the IT elements, sir. But paucity of time. In fact, some questions were suggestions were coming
Okay.
in, so I have answered it on your behalf, sir. Some
Okay.
suggestions, not
Okay, I think
questions.
I broadly covered, and I think you can go along with it. No, you
So
can
thank you
talk
so
on-
much. Asa, I know it's so difficult. It's so difficult for me to stop people like you from giving your information and knowledge. It's so difficult. I'm the most. My BP is 150 by 200 now. So because to stop people like you sharing knowledge, and thank you very much. It's a superb panel, and thank you to the audience. I have tried to answer some questions on your behalf because I thought I knew something about it. So Vishali, all over to you, and thank you very much, the panelists and the audience. Vishali.
Thank you so much. It was indeed a really thoughtful discussion. Thank you to all the speakers for being here today with us and highlighting disruptive technologies that are bolstering the construction industry. The potential of construction in terms of material, technology, innovation, construction methods really look promising, and you really brought out your experience in sharing what you are currently doing and what you envisage to do in the future as well. With disruption, we are really bringing the conventional methods and the new age construction methods together with a pinch of technology. And thank you so much for everyone joining us. With this, we conclude today's webinar. And I request everyone to stay in touch and stay tuned to www.constructionworld.in for many such interesting discussions and live events. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Rajiv, for the nice coordination. Thanks, team.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Same to you. Bye.